On today's show, the Orlando Magic are battling it out for a top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference after not even making the playoffs last season, and they're doing it with a defensive identity founded by head coach Jamahl Mosley. Paolo Banchero's growth here in year 2 and playoff expectations for this young Orlando Magic team. It's all coming up on today's Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with over 3 million members. They're the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports because it's just you against the numbers. You just pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Prize Picks is so simple to play. You can make your picks and submit an entry in less than 60 seconds. They've got quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of different players and stat types, which is what makes Prize Picks the #1 DFS app on the market. And now it's demon time on Prize Picks. Demons and goblins are the newest and most exciting way to play over at Prize Picks. Squares marked with red demons or green goblins get you different payouts. You can now win up to 100 times back your money with as little as 4 correct picks. So if you've been thinking about giving daily fantasy sports a try, go check out Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA with promo code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Joining us now is the host of Locked On Magic, Philip Rossman-Reich. You can track down wherever you listen to your podcast and on YouTube. Just search Locked On Magic. And Philip, the Orlando Magic maybe surprising some people this season to go from missing the playoffs entirely last year to battling for what could be a top 4 seed this season, sitting just a half game back of the New York Knicks for that 4th spot in the Eastern Conference. That's a pretty significant jump to make. Now, I know that, they had a rough start to last season and they actually finished last year really, really strong, but how did they kind of carry, I guess, the momentum from last year into the season? What's kind of been the main reason for the Magic's success so far this season?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is the way they finished last season. They finished with 34 wins, which isn't crazy, but when you think about teams taking the leap from young team to potential 4 seed, 5 seed potential playoff team, they usually hit 500 somewhere in the middle there. Well, the Magic last year went 29-28 after their 5-20 start. And in the process, they really discovered what their identity needs to be. They were, after December 5th last year, they were, I think, the 5th best defense in the league. So for nearly 2/3 of the season, they were one of the best defenses in the league, and that has really carried over. They saw kind of proof of concept that if we defend at a high level, we're going to be competitive more often than not. So this year, obviously, I think they're 3rd or 4th in the league in defensive rating. They've been no lower than like 6th in defensive rating at any point really since the beginning, since stats had some weight to them. They're truly one of the best defensive teams in the league, and while their offense still leaves something to be desired, you add in the growth from young players that you expect to grow, like Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner and Jalen Suggs. You add that everyone's really committed defensively. They see that it's working. And now you have a young team playing with confidence and belief that they should be there. That's really how you get the formula for the kind of surge that the Magic have had here over the last month and a half, 2 months.
Yeah, the Magic defense is something to marvel. The size, the length, the point of attack defenders that they have, it is something you gotta really you gotta give some love to the Magic and pay attention to them for a few games to really notice how smothering the defense can feel at times. Now, Jamal Mosley recently received a contract extension that carries him through the 2027-2028 season. How has Mosley kind of shaped this new era of Magic basketball, and why was extending him the right move, Philip?
Yeah, I really, he will never admit this. And this is, one of the reasons why Jamal is, I think, so beloved by everyone. Like, he gives all the credit to the players. He gives a lot of credit to his coaching staff. But I really think that is part of the culture that he set. You think about it a lot. Who you hire at the start of your rebuild is really important. If you have a babysitter who, and unfortunately, I think you can attest to this. If you have don't trigger my PTSD, man. Come on. But if you have a coach that's kind of a babysitter that isn't setting a standard and setting a culture, things can go off the rails really, really quick. From the moment that Jamahl Mosley, stepped foot in the building, stepped foot in the practice facility, he said, we're going to be a hard-nosed defensive team. And the results may not have shown early on, and obviously they won 22 games his first season. The results may not have shown early on, but you could tell there was a lot of buy-in, that there were a lot of players who believe that, Jamal, that this coach is invested in me and my development and ultimately invested in our success. And, why did Jamahl Mosley get this contract extension? A lot of that is just look at the results. The Magic go from 22 wins his first year, 34 last year, to now they're sitting at 42 with 11 games to go. They're fighting for the playoffs. They're making the kind of progression that you expect a young team to make if they're moving in the right direction. Mosley will never take the credit for this, but I really do think a lot of it comes down to Mosley and the culture of selflessness that he creates, starting with himself, and just belief in everyone around them and around this team that he instills in everyone. He's created a really strong culture. I know a lot of people have compared this Magic team to a college team with how close they are as friends and as people, and you can see that on the bench with how they celebrate each other. To me, I think that starts with the belief and the culture that Mosley set for this group.
Now, at the core of all of the, well, maybe not all of the Orlando Magic success, because again, the defensive identity, all that is, credit to Jamahl Mosley for instilling that. But for the Magic to have success, Paolo Banchero is right there. Yeah. Right? He's their guy. He's the franchise guy. This is year 2 for him. He received an all-star nod, his first of likely many to come. How have you seen him kind of grow and get better here in year 2 versus year 1, Paolo Banchero?
Yeah, so much of it's just about patience. I think a lot of stars, they know they're going to have the ball in their hands a lot, and that the defense is always focused on them. And so I think you see this a lot with young players who have that responsibility heaped on them very early on. That first year, they don't know what they're doing, and they make a lot of mistakes, and they shoot really inefficiently. Kevin Durant was really bad his rookie. He scored 20 points per game, but he was really inefficient and kind of bad. And so you see some of these arguments get made. What was really, I think, astounding to watch with Paolo this year is how much more patient he is. He spends an extra split second or an extra half second looking over his shoulder in the post to see where the double's coming from before figuring out where to attack. He's had his 40-point games, but to me, the more impressive games that he's had are his triple-double games. He's had 2 triple-doubles this year, one against Denver, up in Denver with a very undermanned Magic team where he had 30 points anyway. And then honestly, his game on Thursday against New Orleans Pelicans was one of the more impressive games that I've seen from him because he got the points part of the triple-double last. He had 10 rebounds and 11 assists, or 10 rebounds and 10 assists before he got his 10th point. And that game, he was in complete control. He was waiting to see where New Orleans was bringing the double, and he trusted his teammates. And to me, I think that's one of the big things that's always really difficult for a young player, especially, is trusting your teammates to be along for the ride with you, especially because you may not have the full talent to be a playoff team. Why are the Magic sitting in 5th in the East right now, fighting for not just 4th, but for 3rd in the East? It's because Paolo does have a trust in the players that he's playing with, that he'll know when to get his and when to step up his scoring, but he'll get 5, 6, 7 assists. He'll still make mistakes. He's a young player. He's 21 years old, but the patience that he has to wait and see what the defense is going to do before he attacks, and then attacking what they give him, to me, that's such a huge step for a young player. Because for me, I don't know how you feel about this. For me, I think it's always easier to teach a player to be selfish than to be unselfish. Paolo, I think, is wants to be a really unselfish player.
I like that. No, that's a great way to look at it, right? Is because if he's unselfish, if he's generating and creating looks for everybody else, then talented players like a Paolo Banchero, right, they can kind of get theirs whenever they want to, right? They can turn it on and they can go after their buckets. So being able to get the team involved is what will ultimately help this Magic team get to where they want to go, at least offensively on that side of the ball. Now, you touched on this a moment ago, and we talked about it from the top, right? The Magic are fighting for a top 4 seed right now in the East. There's still a lot of shuffling that could take place in the Eastern Conference standings. They're a half game back of the 4th seed. They're only a game back of the 3rd seeded Cleveland Cavaliers. So when you are starting to look at the playoff picture, Philip, and as it's kind of taking hold and teams are kind of settling into the spots that you think they're going to be in, as it stands right now, who would be maybe more like the ideal first round matchup for the Magic if you're looking at the, you know, the teams in the East and the way that the Magic could, you know, finish as high as third, or potentially maybe they slot in right where they are right now as fifth?
Yeah. You know, I think first off, let me say this. I don't think there is an ideal matchup for the Magic in the playoffs because they're young. They don't know how to play in the playoffs. And you look at the opponents they could be facing in the playoffs, all of them have experience. You know, New York's been there, Cleveland's been there. Indiana hasn't been to the playoffs, but they got a champion in Pascal Siakam. They've been in the play-in before. Philadelphia could have Joel Embiid. They're not your typical 6 seed. They're not going to be your typical 6 seed. And, you know, we don't know whether Embiid's going to come back before the end of the season or not, but that, you know, that they could be a very different kind of matchup. But, you know, this is not to pick on any team. I do think Indiana is the ideal matchup. If Orlando can somehow get to the 3, and it's not impossible for them to get to the 3, but if they can get to the 3 and face the Pacers in the 6, I think that is a favorable matchup for Orlando. Now, they did lose the only game they played against the Pacers with Pascal Siakam, but that was without Jalen Suggs. Orlando seems to have figured out Indiana's kryptonite. They've always been a team that's known how to slow down that Pacers half-court attack. They have Jalen Suggs who can kind of lock out Tyrese Halliburton a little bit, kind of slow him down a little bit. And their defense seems to give the Pacers offense and that prolific offense that they have a lot of problems, while also allowing Orlando to generate some offense of their own because, yes, they have Pascal Siakam now, but they don't have the size elsewhere to match up with Orlando. And because Wendell Carter can pull Miles Turner away from the paint a little bit, they can get downhill and attack. That's been a favorable matchup for the Orlando all season. Indiana's proven they can beat them, so I'm not going to sit here and say it's some like, oh, that's an easy sweep. There is no easy matchup for Orlando because they've never been to the playoffs. They've never felt this pressure. They never felt the energy from the crowd that a playoff, series brings. They think they're feeling it a little bit at the Kia Center during this homestand, but I'm sitting there thinking like, this is nice. This ain't the playoffs, even from Orlando fans. There's going to be a little bit of a shock for them, I think, as a young team. Young teams and young stars especially always struggle in their first playoff series. I'm expecting a little bit of that, but I do think Orlando does match up more favorably with Indiana. I think New York would probably win the series because Orlando hasn't seen them very much with OG Anunoby, but Orlando's matched up well with the Knicks too. They won the season series with the Knicks, and while the Knicks weren't healthy for any one of those games and the Magic weren't healthy for a couple of those games too, that could be another series where the scores are really low and allows Orlando to kind of hang around and see what happens. So, I think the Magic, while young and I don't think necessarily favored to win any, most of the playoff series that they could potentially be in, I think Orlando's going to be a tougher out than a lot of people give them credit for because, defense travels in the playoffs. Defense matters, and this is an elite defensive team.
If I could have my pick, I would love to see the elite defense of the Orlando Magic go against the high-octane offense of the Indiana Pacers. That would be my own personal pick just from a basketball fan perspective. Now, final thing I've got for you here, Philip. Thoughts on the Anthony Black, Grady Dick jersey swap?
Fans have been wanting... Let me say this. During the draft, fans wanted them both on the same team. And from what I understand, talking to people at the Kia Center last week, they tried to get Jalen Suggs over for the photo as well.
Oh, no.
And he left the court because he is a veteran and he knows not to be with that mess. We can have fun, but I remember in copy editing class, always have a dirty mind, kids. Always have a dirty mind.
Oh, what a move. That was some peak television right there. But how will Paolo Banchero and the young Orlando Magic react to their first playoff series? How deep of a postseason run will they be able to go on? You're going to have us covered for all of that and so much more over at Locked On Magic. Philip, thanks for stopping by Locked On NBA with me.
Thanks for having me on.